In a bustling coastal town not far from the sea, there lived three young women named Io, Bola, and Funmi. Io and Bola were known throughout the town for their striking beauty. Whenever they walked down the streets, people would stop and stare, captivated by their charm. Even the animals seemed to notice, gathering around to catch a glimpse of the two beauties. Io and Bola's popularity made them very proud. They began to see themselves as more than ordinary women, almost like small goddesses of the town. This pride led them to reject every man who asked to marry them, including Tundi, the son of the wealthiest fisherman in town. "No man in this town has enough money to take care of us," Io would say. Bola would add, "We want to marry men who have everything in the world. That way, when we go to their homes, we'll become even more beautiful, not ugly." Their friend Funmi was different. She wasn't considered pretty like Io and Bola, but she had a kind heart. Funmi never rejected anyone who showed interest in her. She eventually married a local shopkeeper and was happy with her simple life. Near the town was a special lagoon where merfolk lived, hidden from human eyes. In this secret underwater world, mermaid people lived much like humans, even getting married. There were two powerful mermaid men in this lagoon, but they didn't want to marry any of the mermaids. They always said they wanted to marry the most beautiful creatures in the world. Io and Bola continued to enjoy their single life, insisting that no man in town could take good care of them. They often visited a quiet beach far from the busy town center. They didn't go there to swim or collect shells, but to have fun and feel special. They would sing, dance, and sometimes splash in the shallow water. One day, one of the mermen from the hidden lagoon came to the surface near the beach. From a distance, he saw Io and Bola. Curious, he swam closer, careful not to be seen. As he got nearer, he was amazed by their beauty. Their skin seemed to glow like gold in the sunlight, and their eyes sparkled like stars. The merman thought to himself, "These are the most beautiful creatures I've ever seen. If my friend saw them, he would surely want to meet them too." He imagined swimming up to them, touching their soft skin and playing in the waves. But he knew that if he appeared suddenly, they would be terrified and might never come back to the beach. So he hid and watched until they were done playing. As Io and Bola were about to leave, he overheard Io say, "Okay, friend, let's go home. We'll come back tomorrow." The merman swam back to the lagoon, excited to tell his friend what he had seen. When he reached their underwater home, he exclaimed, "I saw something today that my eyes have never seen before. Two beautiful humans with skin shining like gold and eyes sparkling like stars." His friend was eager to see these beauties for himself. The first merman explained, "I heard them say they'll come back to the beach tomorrow." The next day, Io and Bola returned to the beach to play as usual. This time, both mermen swam close to watch them. The second merman was just as impressed by their beauty. Both mermen fell in love with Io and Bola at first sight, but they faced a big problem. They didn't know how to approach the women or even learn more about them. So they decided to keep coming to the beach whenever Io and Bola were there, listening to their conversations to learn about their likes and dislikes. One day, while hiding nearby, they overheard an interesting conversation between the two women. Io said, "I'm the prettiest woman in the world, and I will marry the most handsome, powerful, and kind man in the world." Bola replied, "And I will marry the strongest and richest man in the world." The mermen were excited to hear this, but also worried. They didn't have the power to turn into humans. Only the king of their underwater realm could grant such magic. Still, they were determined to find a way to win the hearts of Io and Bola. After the women left the beach, the two mermen swam back to their underwater kingdom. They went straight to their king's coral palace to make a request. "Great king," they said, "we have waited for a day like this to come, and it has finally arrived. We have seen the loves of our lives, two beautiful humans who have truly captured our hearts. We humbly ask you to give us the power to turn into humans. We can't appear to them as mermen, they would be scared. But if we could approach them as rich and powerful men, they might listen to us and perhaps even become our wives." The merman king responded angrily, "No, I will never do that. You know the law of our kingdom. Mermaid people can only be turned into humans if they have an important mission in the human world. I can't turn you into humans just because you want to get married. There are plenty of beautiful mermaids in our kingdom. Go and marry them instead." Disappointed but not discouraged, the two mermen left the palace. They were sad, but they didn't give up. Day after day they returned to the king, begging him to reconsider. Each time the king said no. Finally, after many attempts, the king saw the pain in their eyes and heard the desperation in their voices. He began to soften. "Very well," the king said in a deep, serious voice. "I will grant you this power, but you must agree to my conditions." The mermen eagerly nodded, ready to accept any terms. "When you marry these women and have children with them, those children will belong to our kingdom," the king declared. "Do you understand and agree to this?" Without hesitation, the mermen agreed. The king then used his magic to give them the power to transform into humans. As they prepared to leave, the king reminded them, "Remember, you are going to the human world for a limited time, not forever. Don't forget that you belong to our kingdom, not theirs. Goodbye, and be careful." The next day, Io and Bola went to the beach as usual. On their way back home, they saw two handsome men. Their faces were smooth and glowed like ripe mangoes, and they were tall and well-built. The men introduced themselves as Femi and Segun. "Hello, beautiful ladies," Femi said with a charming smile. "How are you today?" Io and Bola, still feeling proud, didn't answer. They tried to walk past without acknowledging the men, but suddenly Io tripped and cut her leg on a sharp piece of coral. She cried out in pain, blood flowing from the wound. Bola, worried for her friend, turned to the men. "Please, can you help us? My friend is hurt, and there's no one else around." Femi stepped forward. "We can do more than help. We can heal," he said confidently. He gently placed his hand on Ao's wound. To the women's amazement, the cut began to close instantly. The blood stopped flowing, and new skin grew over the wound. Within moments, Ao's leg was completely healed. Ao stood up, shocked and confused. She and Bola exchanged bewildered looks, silently wondering who these mysterious men could be. Femi and Segun, still able to use their merman abilities to read thoughts, heard their unspoken questions. They answered aloud, "We are the men you've been looking for, the ones who have everything in this world." Segun pointed to a nearby grove of trees. Suddenly, 4 beautiful white horses emerged from the bushes. "Your homes seem far. Why don't we give you a ride back to town?" he suggested. Still stunned by what they had witnessed, Ao and Bola cautiously agreed. As they rode back to town, their minds raced with questions. Who were these men? How did they heal Ao's wound so quickly? Could they really be the powerful, wealthy men they claimed to be? By the time they reached town, night had fallen. Ao and Bola, still living with their families, had to part ways. Femi went with Bola to her home, while Segun accompanied Ao. That night, neither Ao nor Bola could sleep. Their encounters with these mysterious men had left them both excited and uneasy. In Ao's home, Segun noticed her restlessness. "Young beauty, it's late. Why aren't you sleeping?" he asked gently. Ao replied in a soft, nervous voice, I'm scared. I don't know you." Segun smiled reassuringly. "I'm a human being, just like you," he said. "What you saw earlier was just a small gift from the gods. You've only seen a little of what I can do. I have the power to change animals into humans and humans into animals. But it's nothing to fear. It's simply a blessing from above, so don't be afraid of me. I'm as human as you are." His words calmed Ao, and her fear began to fade. She felt more at ease with him and asked, "What's your name again?" "My name is Segun," he answered with a warm smile. They both smiled at each other, and then Segun asked, "Will you marry me, Ao?" Ao's heart raced. She had rejected so many men before, but something about Segun felt different. She found herself saying, "Yes, I think I'm falling in love with you. I'm already yours." Meanwhile, at Bola's house, a similar conversation was taking place with Femi. By morning, both women had agreed to marry these seemingly magical men. The next day, Femi and Segun asked everyone in town to bring their sick relatives to them. Young and old, blind people, and even women who hadn't been able to have children for years. To everyone's amazement, the two men healed them all. This display of power and kindness made Ayo and Bola fall even deeper in love with Femi and Segun. Soon, they were married in a grand celebration that the whole town attended. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Femi and Segun continued to use their healing powers to help the townspeople. However, there was one person they couldn't seem to help: the town chief's wife. She had been unable to have a child since her marriage, and this worried the chief greatly. He feared that without an heir, there would be no one to lead the town after him. Femi and Segun visited the chief's house many times to try and help his wife, but their powers seemed ineffective in this case. This puzzled and frustrated them, as they had never failed to heal anyone before. After several months, Ayo and Bola became pregnant. While this should have been a joyous time, Femi and Segun grew increasingly anxious. They knew their time in the human world was coming to an end, and they would soon have to return to their underwater kingdom. One night, Ayo woke up to find a strange sight. Instead of her husband Segun, there was a large, shimmering creature beside her, half man, half fish. She let out a terrified scream and tried to run, but found the doors were locked. "Don't be afraid," the creature said, and Ayo recognized Segun's voice. "I am your husband. I would never hurt you. But listen carefully. I never wanted to leave you, but I must. Our king only gave me a short time in the human world, and that time is now up." Segun continued, his voice filled with sadness and urgency. "The baby you're carrying is not an ordinary child. It belongs to our underwater kingdom. On the day you give birth, I must come and take the baby away. Please understand, you are still my wife, and no other man should ever come near you." With those words, the merman Segun slipped out through the window and disappeared into the night. Ayo, overcome with shock and fear, forced the door open and ran to Bola's house. But when she arrived, she found a horrifying scene. Bola lay motionless on the floor. It seemed that she too had discovered Femi's true nature, but the shock had been too much for her. In her panic to escape, she had hit her head and died instantly. The townspeople were distraught over Bola's sudden death. They asked Ayo many questions about what had happened and where their husbands had gone. Ayo, still in shock and fearing that no one would believe the truth, lied and said that Femi and Segun had traveled to a far-off village to heal people there. As days passed, life in the town slowly returned to normal, though Ayo carried a heavy secret. She lived in constant fear of the day she would give birth, knowing that her child would be taken away from her. One night, the town chief had a vivid dream. In it, he saw Ayo giving birth to a baby boy who wore a golden crown. The child grew up to become a powerful and wise leader, ruling the town with fairness and bringing prosperity to all. When the chief woke up, he dismissed it as just a strange dream. But the next night, he had the exact same dream again. This time, he took it seriously. Could it be, he wondered, that Ayo is carrying the future leader of our town? Even if I don't have a child of my own, as long as there's someone who can rule and take good care of our people, I'll be content. The following day, the chief summoned Ayo to his house. When she arrived, he told her about his dreams. Ayo was shocked and began to cry, saying, "This can't be possible. The baby doesn't belong here." But she couldn't bring herself to explain further. The chief, not understanding Ayo's distress, decided that she should be protected at all costs. He declared that Ayo would live in his compound for the remainder of her pregnancy and be treated like royalty, as she was carrying the future leader of the town. Ayo moved into the chief's compound, but she was far from happy. The chief noticed her constant sadness and tried to understand why. One day, he found her crying alone and decided to approach her. "Ayo," he said gently, "a problem shared is a problem halved. Please, tell me what's troubling you. I am the leader of this town, and I have the power to help you, whatever the issue may be." Ayo, realizing she could no longer keep her secret, finally revealed the truth. "The problem is the baby," she said, her voice trembling. "My husband, the man the town knew, is actually a merman from a hidden kingdom beneath the waves. He said he will come back to take the baby as soon as it's born." The chief was stunned by this revelation, but he quickly gathered his wits. Standing up, he declared in a strong voice, "Nothing will take this baby away from our town. This child is destined to be our future leader. I will tell my warriors to be ready, my hunters to be vigilant, and all our spiritual leaders to prepare their strongest protections. This baby is going nowhere." Ayo felt a glimmer of hope at the chief's words. For the first time since discovering the truth about Segun, she believed that perhaps her child could be saved. As Ayo's due date approached, the entire town prepared for a battle. The chief ordered the warriors to sharpen their spears and swords. Hunters loaded their guns with special bullets blessed by the spiritual leaders. Every spiritual man and woman in the town prepared their most powerful charms and incantations. On the day Ayo went into labor, the town was on high alert. Warriors stood guard around the chief's compound, while hunters patrolled the beach. Spiritual leaders chanted non-stop, creating invisible barriers of protection. After a difficult labor, Ayo gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The child had unusual features. His skin seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow, and his eyes were the deep blue of the ocean. As soon as the baby was born, a tense silence fell over the town. Everyone waited, watching for any sign of the merman's return. Hours passed, and nothing happened. The townspeople began to relax, thinking perhaps the danger had passed. But as the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the town, a loud rumbling sound came from the direction of the beach. The ground began to shake, and a massive wave rose from the sea, much larger than any the townspeople had ever seen. As the wave approached the shore, two figures could be seen riding atop it, Segun and Femi, in their true merman forms. The town's warriors rushed to the beach, brandishing their weapons. Hunters took aim with their guns, and the spiritual leaders began their most powerful incantations. But as the wave crashed onto the shore, it swept past the town's defenders as if they weren't even there. The water surged through the town, flowing directly towards the chief's compound where Ayo and the baby were. Despite the barriers and protections put in place, the water seeped through every crack and crevice, filling the room where Ayo clutched her newborn child. As the water filled the room, Ayo held her baby tightly, tears streaming down her face. The chief stood protectively in front of them, his most powerful charm in hand. Suddenly, the water began to swirl, forming a whirlpool in the center of the room. From its depths emerged Segun and Femi, their fishtails gleaming in the fading light. "Ayo!" Segun called, his voice a mixture of longing and determination. "It's time! Give me our child!" The chief stepped forward, his voice booming with authority. "You will not take this child. He belongs to our town and is destined to be our future leader." Femi laughed, a sound like waves crashing against rocks. "You don't understand, human. This child is of two worlds. He cannot belong solely to the land." As the confrontation unfolded, the baby began to cry. To everyone's amazement, the child's wails seemed to calm the swirling waters. The room fell silent, all eyes on the infant. Ayo, her voice trembling but determined, spoke up. "Segun, Femi, please. This child needs both worlds. Can't we find a way for him to live in both?" The mermen exchanged glances, uncertainty crossing their faces. It was clear they hadn't considered this possibility. At that moment, a new voice rang out, deep, resonant, and filled with power. The water parted, revealing the Merman King himself. His presence filled the room, commanding respect from both humans and mermen alike. "I have watched these events unfold," the king said, his eyes scanning the room. "It seems we have all underestimated the power of love and the strength of human determination." He turned to Segun and Femi. "My sons, you disobeyed our laws by falling in love with humans, but in doing so, you have created a bridge between our worlds." The king then addressed Ayo and the chief. "Humans, your bravery and willingness to protect this child, even in the face of powers you don't understand, is admirable." He paused, seeming to consider something deeply. "Perhaps," he continued, "it is time for a change. This child, born of both land and sea, could be the key to a new understanding between our peoples." The king waved his hand, and a soft glow enveloped the baby. This child will have the ability to live both on land and in the sea. For half of each year, he will dwell among humans, learning your ways and growing to understand your world. The other half, he will live beneath the waves, coming to know the wonders and wisdom of the ocean. Ayo's eyes widened with hope. You mean, I won't lose my baby? The king smiled kindly. No, brave mother, you will not lose your child. But you must be willing to share him with the sea, just as Segun and Femi must be willing to share him with the land. The chief stepped forward, bowing respectfully to the Merman king. This is a wise solution, your majesty. Our town would be honored to raise this special child and teach him our ways. Segun and Femi, their expressions a mix of relief and joy, swam closer to Ayo. We're sorry for the pain we've caused you, Segun said softly. We never meant to hurt anyone. We only wanted to experience the love we saw in the human world. Ayo looked at her child, then at Segun and Femi, and finally at the chief and the Merman king. She took a deep breath and nodded. For the sake of our child, and for the hope of bringing our two worlds together, I accept this arrangement. The Merman king raised his trident, and a soft light filled the room. Then let it be so. This child shall be a bridge between land and sea, a symbol of unity and understanding. As the light faded, the water receded, leaving the room dry as if nothing had happened. The baby cooed softly in Ayo's arms, his eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. The chief turned to address the townspeople who had gathered outside. Today marks the beginning of a new era for our town, he announced. We have been blessed with a child who will grow to understand both the ways of the land and the mysteries of the sea. Let us welcome him and prepare to learn from him as he grows. In the years that followed, the town flourished. The child, named Akin, meaning brave warrior, grew into a wise and compassionate leader. During his time on land, he brought new insights and knowledge to the townspeople, teaching them to respect and care for the ocean. When he returned from his time beneath the waves, he shared the wonders of the sea world, fostering a deep appreciation for the interconnectedness of all life. Ayo watched her son grow with pride, marveling at his ability to bridge two worlds. Segun and Femi became frequent visitors to the town, no longer hiding their true nature. Slowly but surely, the barrier between the human world and the merfolk world began to dissolve. The town became known far and wide as a place of harmony between land and sea. People came from all over to learn from Akin and to witness the unique cooperation between humans and merfolk. And so, what began as a tale of secrets and fear transformed into a story of understanding, acceptance, and the power of love to overcome even the greatest of differences. The legacy of Ayo, Segun, and their extraordinary son continued to shape the relationship between land and sea for generations to come, reminding all who heard their story that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from embracing the unknown and finding common ground in the most unexpected places.